Andrew Williams, a 45-year-old millionaire, sits in a lavish penthouse in Midtown Albany. The skyline, with its glittering towers, feels less like a source of pride and more like a series of empty reflections. Financial victories defined his existence, but they did not fill the void of meaning within him. The constant pulse of stock market transactions and the city's vibrant energy seemed a futile attempt to drown out his loneliness. "I have everything a man could want," Andrew thought, his eyes staring at the horizon. "Everything except one that can outlast me. A legacy born of my soul, marriage, and love had betrayed him twice before, causing him to become disillusioned." His ex-wives admired his wealth, but not the man who earned it. Love, in his eyes, was nothing more than an unreliable gamble. Determined to find a solution, Andrew sought the answer he considered the simplest in air: no wife, no fragile promises, only one child. This shift in perspective marked an important turning point in his life, as he moved from seeking companionship to pursuing a coldly calculated legacy. Later that day, Andrew navigated the bustling streets of Albany in his Lamborghini Diablo. As he approached a red light near Central Park, a young woman appeared in front of his window. Her pale skin, see-through blue eyes, and messy appearance caught his attention for a moment. She held out her hand hesitantly and asked softly, "Do you have anything for me?" His frustration flared up. Lost Andrew snarled, pressing the accelerator as the light turned green. However, as he drove, his obsessive gaze lingered in his mind, making him anxious in a way he couldn't explain. A few blocks later, he suddenly pulled over to the side, his jaw clenched as he muttered to himself. He turned around and drove back, finding her exactly where he had left her, lost in the chaos of the city. Pulling up to the curb, he lowered the window. "Come in." "No questions," he commanded, his voice sharp and resilient. The young woman hesitated, doubt etched into her face. Her voice, though gentle, carries dignity. "I'm not that kind of woman," she said cautiously. Andrew raised his eyebrows, his tone steely. "Do you think someone like me would have such a hobby? You're safe with me. Now don't waste my time and come in." Finally, with reluctant steps, she climbed into the car, her every move deliberate and tense. As silence filled the car, Andrew's eyes rushed towards her. Her youth, perhaps in her late 20s, was overshadowed by the fatigue carved into her face. Life is obviously cruel. Finally, he broke the silence, his voice cold and considerate. "I have a suggestion," he said with calculated precision. "I want a child, nothing more. There is no love, no relationship, just an heir. In return, I will provide financial security for the duration of the arrangement. Once it's over, you'll be free to leave." The young woman, Sophia Cooper, turned to him, her eyes wide in disbelief. "You promised not to touch me," she whispered. "Of course not," Andrew replied curtly, as if the suggestion had offended him. "It will be handled clinically. This is absolutely a business deal." The noise of the city seemed to fade in the background as Sophia processed her words. A flood of emotions swirled within her: skepticism, resignation, and a faint glimmer of hope. Her dreams have long been crushed, leaving her with the shadow of the hopeful young artist who once made her to the city of Albany. "I don't see any other choice," she whispered finally, her voice trembling. "I accept." Andrew, always calm, leaned back in his chair, his tone as detached as ever. "What's your name?" he asked. "And why are you wandering these streets?" "Sophia Cooper," she said, her voice fragile but steady. "I came here from London 5 years ago, full of dreams. I left everything behind, believing that this city would welcome me. Instead, it consumes me, my ambition, my dignity, my hope. Now I'm invisible, lost in a place I no longer understand." She stopped, her eyes distant. "Sometimes I dream about my hometown, the fields of London, the rain on the roof. But those dreams were like a cruel reminder of what I had lost. I don't even have enough to come back." Andrew listened, her rudimentary honesty piercing his protected appearance. For a moment, he felt a ray of awareness. Her words reflected the emptiness he had carried for years. Taking a breath, he stabilized himself. "Then let's make it simple," he said coldly. "You'll hold my baby, and when it's over, I'll provide enough for you to go back to London and start over. Are we clear?" Sophia hesitated, her mind racing with memories of her struggles and failures. This was not the life she envisioned, but it was an opportunity to reclaim anything. With a slight nod, she whispered, "We're clear. I accept." This agreement, created out of necessity and separation, will soon lead both to a path that neither could have foreseen. Despite being bound by a contract, it will unearth the truth, emotions, and transformations that will change their lives forever. Andrew Williams nodded, his attitude still more effective than ever. "We're going to draft a contract," he says realistically. "There are terms that we will need to link." However, Sophia Cooper is not the one to let things pass without a doubt. Tilting her head slightly, she asked, "Why would a person like you need a loveless uterus?" Her voice carried curiosity, but her gaze pierced deeper, as if she was searching for an answer that he rarely gave. Andrew froze for a moment, her words hitting a nerve he wasn't prepared to admit. Normally calculating and calm, he now felt a strange hole creep in a glimmer of nostalgia, frustration, and something he couldn't name. However, he quickly hides it behind the cold separation that has always served him so well. "My name is Andrew Williams," he began, his tone steady but cold. "And yes, I have it all: power, wealth, influence. People either respect me or fear me, but none of them love me." He paused, his voice lowered. "Love is nothing but a failed social contract. It is built on promises that no one keeps. I've lived through it twice." He leaned forward, his eyes sharp and relentless. "Both marriages have collapsed. They never love me, only what I stand for. The shine of success, the facade of status. Love, I have learned, is just a transaction disguised as an emotion. I'm not interested in repeating those mistakes." Sophia was silent for a moment, caught off guard by the apparent honesty of his words. After that, her expression softened. "Your words," she said softly, "are just as calculated as yours." A faint smile flashed across her lips, but her eyes betrayed a deeper understanding. "However, I see more than that. You're not just afraid of love, Andrew. I crave it more than I'm willing to admit." Her observation hung in the air as a challenge. Andrew didn't answer, instead choosing to start the car. The engine's low growl filled the heavy silence, drowning out the thoughts he wasn't ready to face. Andrew's midtown mansion looms ahead, a marble and steel fortress with no warmth. It is a testament to his accomplishments, but it lacks the life that makes a house a home. Sophia, overwhelmed by its magnificence, followed him inside, her footsteps hesitating on the glittering floor. Chloe, Andrew called as they walked in. A poised woman appeared almost immediately, with a professional but warm attitude. "Make her well groomed," he said. "Clothes, bathtubs, food, whatever she needs." Chloe nodded with a faint smile which contrasted sharply with Andrew's detached tone. "Follow me," she said softly, gesturing for Sophia to come along. Sophia quietly moved through the hallway, looking around. Every detail of the mansion screams luxury, but it feels empty, like a museum without emotions. She realized that this was the beginning of something that would change her life forever. That evening, Andrew sat in his office, focusing on the complex terms of the contract. The room, lined with dark wood and carefully curated bookshelves, exudes power. A light knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he said without looking up. Elizabeth, the butler, walked in with her usual grace. "You called, sir?" "Yes," Andrew replied. "Bring Miss Cooper down immediately." Kevin Martin, Andrew's trusted lawyer, sat in the room. He stiffens at the sight of Sophia, his usual measured attitude slipping. "Miss Cooper," he whispered, barely audible, "you're amazing." Sophia blushed but quickly regained her composure. However, Andrew felt a pain that he did not anticipate. It was a strange, unwelcome feeling: jealousy. Hiding his anxiety, he gestured towards the table. "Let's proceed with the contract," he said curtly. The atmosphere was tense when the contract was reviewed and signed. While the terms are clear, it's clear that what binds them is now much more complex than any legal document. Andrew Williams sat quietly in Fertility World's sterile living room, his hands on his knees. He glanced at Sophia Cooper, who was sitting next to him, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her coat. The severity of their arrangement weighs on both, although no one talks about it. When the doctor called them in, Andrew stood up first, his face unreadable as he reached out to help her up. Sophia hesitates but accepts it, allowing him to lead her into the room where their lives are about to change. Dr. Stephen, a calm man with a calm presence, prepared the ultrasound machine. Sophia lay on her back, her body tense with anticipation. Andrew stood by the door, a stiff posture, though his eyes betrayed a glint of something deeper. When the sound of the first heartbeat fills the air, time seems to stop. Everyone froze, captivated by the rhythmic pulse of the new life. Life doesn't declare itself with fanfare, Dr. Stephen said, his voice steady, but with the eternal rhythm of a beating heart. He stared at the screen for a while longer before smiling. Congratulations, he added. You're expecting a trilogy. Sophia gasped, her hands instinctively resting on her stomach. Tears filled her eyes, a mixture of shock and joy filled her. 3 heartbeats, 3 lives. It was more than she had ever expected. Andrew, standing silently, felt a strange warmth rise in his chest. He stepped forward, bent down to place a gentle kiss on her forehead. Sophia closed her eyes. The touch was unusually gentle and gentle. This isn't just a contract, she thought. This is life, a life that I will love with all my heart. Andrew stood beside her, his eyes staring at the screen. For the first time, he realized this wasn't just a business deal, it was something much greater. 3 months later, the soft light of the setting sun shone on the rooftop of Andrew's midtown home. Sophia sat quietly, her hands on her growing belly, as she looked out at the horizon. The once terrifying marble and steel fortress had begun to feel less cold, though her heart was still heavy with the terms of their agreement. Andrew looked at her from the doorway, his expression contradictory. She looked vulnerable, a side of her that he rarely saw, and something instinctively stirred in him. He approached with deliberate footsteps, his voice softer than usual. Are you okay? He asked, his usual silence replaced by a hint of worry. Sophia looked up, her surprise could be felt. Just a little dizzy, she admitted, smiling faintly. Andrew hesitated for a moment before surprising them both by bending down and lifting her into his arms. You don't have to do this, she said, her voice tinged with both humility and bewilderment. I want to, he replied firmly, in an unusually soft voice. When he carried her back inside, the silence between them felt heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was a general silence, filled with indescribable emotions. When they arrived at her room, Sophia gasped. The once simple space has been turned into a sanctuary. Soft fabrics, fresh flowers, and delicate touches speak of warmth and care. What is this? She whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Andrew gently put her down, his gaze steady. I think you might like it, he said, in a cautious voice. Every new life deserves a space filled with light. Sophia's eyes were filled with tears. Love requires nothing, she said softly, but it changes everything. Andrew turned away, her words interrupting him. He had spent years building walls to protect himself from vulnerability, but in that moment, something inside him began to crack. The birthday came, full of anticipation and anxiety. Andrew, I think it's about time, Sophia whispered, her voice trembling as she hugged her belly. Without hesitation, Andrew helped her to her feet, his movements unusually gentle. The engines of the Lamborghini Diablo roar as they accelerate through the streets of the city, but inside the car, a deep silence lasts. I'll be right here with you, Andrew said, his voice firm but calm. Sophia glanced at him, her eyes reflecting gratitude she couldn't put into words. At Fertility World, the medical team worked exactly as the delivery process took place. Hours of labor culminated in a shrill cry, a boy. Andrew's heart tightened, his breathing pounding as the nurse placed the bundle in Sophia's hand. A moment later, another cry followed, and then a third. A boy, and finally a girl. Tears rolled down Sophia's face as she hugged the children, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Their perfect Andrew," standing beside her, felt something indescribably stirring in him. For the first time, his carefully calculated world seems irrelevant in the face of this raw, uncontrollable joy. But as the joy of the moment subsides, so does the weight of the contract. Tears of sadness mingled with Sophia's happiness as she looked down at her children. "I don't want to leave them," she said, her voice shattered. "But this is our agreement, and I will respect it." Andrew's chest tightened at her words. The rigid terms he had relied on now felt empty. Without speaking, he bent down and kissed her forehead. A silent promise formed in his mind. Sophia touched her daughter's face, tears falling freely. In that moment she realizes love, even born from a contract, can transcend any agreement. Andrew, standing beside her, felt his own walls crumble. The life they had created together was no longer bound by paper, they were bound by something much greater. Andrew Williams sat quietly in the large living room of his midtown mansion, watching the shadows stretch across the marble floor. 3 months have passed since Sophia Cooper gave birth to triplets, and the air is heavy with unspeakable emotions. Today was the day she had to leave the mansion, her children, and the life they had built together, no matter how fragile it was. Sophia packed a small suitcase in her room, the quiet sound of the zipper echoing like a farewell. Each item she placed inside was heavier than the previous one, although the bag itself was almost empty. The wealth Andrew had promised her now meant nothing. When she hugged each of her children one last time, kissing their little faces, her heart broke again. "I should have been a vagabond," she thought, tears streaming down her eyes. "Anything will be easier than the pain that tears me apart." Walking down the vast staircase, each step was like a dagger to her soul. Arriving at the towering front door, her trembling hand rested on the bronze doorknob. The weight of the moment weighed heavily on her, but she knew she had to honor the agreement. Taking a deep breath, she was about to leave. "Where are you going?" Sophia Andrews' voice came from across the mansion, preventing her from following her. The sound echoed in the vast, empty hall, and the commander was both desperate. She slowly turned to face him, her tearful face touching him. "It's because of Kevin Martin, isn't it?" Andrew emphasized, stepping closer. "You fell in love with him, didn't you?" Sophia shook her head, her voice trembling with disappointment. "You don't understand anything, Andrew," she said, her tone hard though there were cracks in it. "This is not about Kevin. Do you remember the last clause of the contract? I had to leave the mansion and the country 90 days after giving birth. That's what we agreed to." Andrew stopped just a few meters away, breathing unevenly. For the first time, his usual stoic mask disappeared, replaced by something rudimentary fear. Without saying a word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the contract. The sharp pages that once defined their arrangement are now like necklaces. "Hold on," he did something that none of them expected. With a sudden, almost violent movement, Andrew began to tear the contract to pieces. Piece by piece, the fragments flew to the floor, their meaning disappearing with them. "I don't care about the contract," Andrew said, his voice shattered as he knelt down in front of her. "I don't care about the deal we made. The only thing I care about is that you stay here, with our kids, with me." Sophia stared at him, stunned. This is Andrew Williams, a man who thrives on control and precision, now just begging at her feet. His vulnerability broke down every barrier she had built around her heart. "Please," Andrew continued, his voice barely whispering. "Stay not for the kids, not for any deal. Stay for us. I'm not asking you to love me or change your feelings, even if you love Kevin or someone else. Just stay for them and for me." Sophia's heart aches as she accepts his rudimentary, unprotected emotions. For a man who has spent his life protecting himself, this is the final act of surrender. She looked at him for a long time, her tears mixed with a growing sense of determination. Gently, she raised her hand and placed it on his head, a gentle but deliberate touch. "Andrew," she began, her voice soft but steady, "how can you be so stupid?" Her lips curled into a bittersweet smile as her tears continued to fall. It's the friend I love, she admits. From the first day he saved me on that street. Even if you hide behind the terms of the contract, my heart is always yours. Andrew looked up at her, skepticism flashing in his calm eyes. Sophia, he whispered, his voice trembling. I love you too. I've loved you for a long time, even if I'm trying to deny it. Please, he continued, taking her hand. Stay not for the trio, not for anything else, but because I want us to be a family. To share our lives together, he paused, his voice thick with emotion. It would be the greatest honor of my life if you were my only true wife, partner in love. Sophia let her suitcase slip out of her hand as she fell into his arms. Putting her arms around him, she whispered in tears, I love you, Andrew. Their embrace, filled with longing and warmth, spoke words they hadn't been able to say for a long time. Andrew pulled her closer, sealing their unspoken promises with a kiss deep, passionate, and filled with all the emotions they had suppressed. A few months later, the mansion was unrecognizable. Laughter echoed through its cold corridors, and warmth took root in every corner. Andrew and Sophia's wedding was a quiet, intimate celebration attended by those who witnessed their journey. In their arms are their triplets' 3 little lives that symbolize all that they have fought for and everything they have become. What started as a separate, impersonal agreement has grown into something extraordinary, a family. As Andrew looked at Sophia and their children, a deep realization filled him. He didn't just sign a contract, he made a lifelong pact with love. In this heartfelt story, we witness the extraordinary journey of Andrew Williams and Sophia Cooper, 2 souls bound by a seemingly cold contract that unexpectedly blossoms into a tale of love, redemption, and family. Andrew, a man hardened by past heartbreak and driven by a desire to leave a legacy, finds himself enlisting the help of Sophia, a woman whose life has been marked by loss and resilience. What begins as a calculated arrangement transforms into a shared experience of vulnerability, hope, and the miracle of new life. Through challenges and revelations, Andrew and Sophia discover that love cannot be confined by contracts or controlled by logic. Their journey teaches us that true connections are born from compassion and understanding, not wealth or status. As their family grows with the arrival of triplets, the walls they built around their hearts crumble, making way for a love neither of them expected but desperately needed. This story reminds us that even in the most unlikely circumstances, the human spirit can find light, warmth, and meaning. It speaks to the power of forgiveness, the courage to embrace vulnerability, and the unyielding bond of family. If this story touched your heart, let us know by giving this video a like and sharing it with your loved ones. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more captivating tales filled with emotion and inspiration. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What moved you the most about Andrew and Sophia's journey? Leave a comment below and share your feelings. Your words help us create a community where everyone can connect through the power of storytelling. Let's continue building a space where love, hope, and meaningful stories thrive. Together, we'll keep the magic of storytelling alive.